Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The film begins with an Asian young man who is spending his vacation in a forest in Indonesia. Suddenly, he notices a trap on the ground that appears to have been there for many years. He takes the trap and continues walking through the forest until he comes across a cave entrance. He enters the cave and throws the trap inside to prevent anyone outside from accidentally stepping on it. He then lights his lighter to illuminate the cave and explore it. Suddenly, he feels something pulling his leg downward. Terrified, he drops the lighter and grabs his rifle in case he needs to defend himself, but he doesn't have time. His whole body is pulled down, and the rifle falls from his hands. He screams, hoping someone will come to his rescue, but unfortunately, no one does. Years after this incident, a team of explorers arrives at the same forest to explore a specific location. With them is a captain named Aryo, whose job is to protect them throughout the journey and secure the places they enter. Aryo goes into the cave alone to ensure its safety and stumbles upon the decomposed body of the young Asian man who had been pulled in years ago. Meanwhile, the rest of the team waits outside for Aryo to finish inspecting the area and give them the signal to begin exploring. Suddenly, they hear a scream coming from the cave, startling them. They think they've been cursed, but it turns out that Aryo had taken the skull to scare them as a joke. However, they don't appreciate the joke and ask their leader, Tino, to tell Aryo not to repeat it. He agrees. With them is a Japanese explorer named Ri, who explains that they are here to explore, not to engage in violence or scare each other. Aryo assures them that they are safe now and can enter and explore the place as they wish. Among them is a young man named Warren and his girlfriend Su-Ling, who refuses to enter the cave with him. She is anxious and asks him to leave her outside while he goes in. Warren agrees, and they begin their exploration journey. The rest of the team stays outside, securing the area with an engineer named Stanley, who was hired to assist them. It turns out that Warren organized this exploration mission and hired them all to help him. Stanley asks Tino about the reason behind Warren's desire to explore the cave, but Tino says he has no idea. He assumes that youthful enthusiasm and the love for uncovering mysteries are the driving forces behind Warren's journey to explore such a place. Warren and Ri continue searching, with Ri photographing mysterious objects she finds. Among them is an artifact with an inscription that describes a path near their location. They leave the cave and look at the land the inscription describes, which is on the opposite side of where they are. They continue walking with the team until they finally reach a closed door. The message they found seems to have led them to this place so they can enter. Aryo goes to open the door for them, but the place smells terrible. Tino asks engineer Stanley about the location, and Stanley explains that it is an abandoned mine that was once occupied by the Dutch. They left it during World War II when Japan occupied Indonesia's islands. The Japanese took over all the mines on the island except this one because it was freed from their hands. Tino is curious as to why this particular mine was different. Warren explains that when the Japanese invaded Indonesia, they occupied these mines and used them as storage for their weapons. That's why they're here, to explore the weapons the Japanese left behind during the war inside this mine. Stanley informs them that there could be an earthquake in the area, and he is interested in exploring the potential danger, as the place could be at risk due to seismic activity. He explains that he needs several hours to accurately inspect the site. Warren agrees and asks him to begin quickly so they don't waste time. The rest of the team occupies themselves with other tasks while Stanley works on his inspection. Warren is standing with Su-Ling when suddenly a fiery shard flies onto his face, injuring him. A burst of gunfire erupts around the team, and they have no idea who is shooting at them. Tino and his leadership team start firing back at the source of the bullets, but the gunfire doesn't stop. In fact, it increases. They are unable to figure out how to stop it. Tino gets hit by a shrapnel in his hand, bleeding, and orders the entire team to enter the mine for protection from the gunfire. Indeed, they all enter the mine, and the last one to get in is a captain from the security team named Aryo. He falls near the entrance of the mine, and a grenade is thrown behind him. Before he can escape, he dives in after the others, and the grenade explodes. The rocks around him collapse, sealing the entrance with the falling debris. Aryo is caught in the explosion. After a while, the team rushes to him and finds his body badly injured. They struggle to pull him out from under the rocks with all their strength, but his leg is stuck, making it hard to free him. They give him painkillers and painfully extract his leg, which is severely bleeding. Aryo screams in agony until they finally get him out. Meanwhile, Tino stands by himself, feeling guilty about what happened, knowing he and his team didn't secure the area well enough. Stanley comes over and tells him that there's no way they can exit through the sealed entrance. He explains that their only option is to go deeper into the mine in hopes of finding an escape route. They've lost all communication devices because they were destroyed in the explosion. Stanley then confronts Warren aggressively, demanding to know why he insisted on exploring this particular mine. Warren explains that a year ago, during an expedition with Ree, they discovered a code that suggested there might be treasure on this island. Stanley becomes furious, realizing that Warren was willing to risk his life in hopes of finding treasure rather than living a poor life. The argument between the two becomes heated, with both men losing their tempers until Tino steps in to stop the fight. He reminds them that their current problem is not about whether there is gold or not. Their priority is finding a way out of the mine before they fall into a trap or face further danger. The team begins moving cautiously, searching for an exit. As they proceed, Tino notices a half-broken door in a corridor, surrounded by rocks, with only a small opening that one person could barely squeeze through. He decides to go first to investigate what's behind the door. Stanley watches him, feeling scared of the eerie surroundings. When Tino asks what he found, Stanley responds that he didn't see anything, and that the place feels as quiet as a graveyard. Tino joins them, and they continue walking for a long distance without anything catching their attention. But the atmosphere becomes increasingly unsettling. They reach a bridge that connects different sections of the mine. Stanley goes first to test its stability and see if it's safe. Once confirmed, the rest of the team follows, walking one by one. Suddenly, strange lights flicker on in the place, revealing an ancient world from Japan. A Japanese song starts playing in the background. Stanley asks Ree to translate the song, and she tells him it's a war song, saying that they will defeat the Americans and the British. The team is bewildered, not understanding who could have turned on the lights and music in the mine, which had been abandoned for years with no human visitors. The exit remains hidden beyond this strange place. Suddenly, the song stops, and Stanley assumes that the pirates who fired at them outside are now messing with their minds to break them down. They continue searching for an escape route, and as they move, they come across a locked iron door. Tino forces it open, and he and Ario go inside alone to check if it's safe for the rest of the team. The room looks like a laboratory, and suddenly, Tino spots a mask hanging on the wall. Without thinking, he shoots at it, only to realize it's just a mask. Then they notice gas masks and other protective gear in the room, and they figure that these were chemical weapons used during World War II. Afterwards, they open another door and find the place safe. Tino calls the rest of the team to join them. In the meantime, Rie discovers disturbing pictures of deformed bodies, which seem to be what she was looking for all along. They move on, still surrounded by a terrifying atmosphere filled with anxiety. The team enters another room in the mine, and Tino tells them it's a communication center. Meanwhile, Ario stands a bit further from the group, ensuring their safety. Suddenly, a masked figure appears behind him, watching him through the mask's lenses. Sensing someone behind him, Ario quickly turns to shoot, but the figure vanishes. Rie continues studying the map in front of them, pointing out the location of the Royal Army's base in 1945 and where they are now. She explains that the area they're in belonged to the 25th Army. At that moment, Tino challenges Warren, saying it's impossible there's any treasure here. Warren disagrees, insisting that all the evidence points to finding it in this mine. Stanley grows suspicious, believing Warren is hiding something. This place is no ordinary vault or tunnel. It's eerie and strange, especially with the unsettling photos they've found. Rie then reveals the truth. The vault they're in used to be the operations center for Unit 731, a military unit responsible for secret medical research and the development of biological and chemical weapons. During the occupation, experiments were conducted on humans, leading to severe deformities. Tino becomes furious, realizing they were soldiers, not mere animals to be experimented on. He is angered that Ree didn't tell them this before they entered, so they could have prepared accordingly. Warren tries to explain that they didn't expect to get trapped here, but Stanley loses his temper, almost attacking Warren. Tino intervenes, calming him down, and they agree to continue their search for an exit, as they have no other choice. The masked figure continues to follow their every move without them realizing it. Tino suggests that he and Ario split from the group to search for an exit faster, but Warren refuses. He insists that as long as he's funding this mission, they follow his orders. Tino tells him he doesn't care about the money or the treasure Warren is after. His only concern is getting out alive. Warren reluctantly agrees, and they proceed, with Tino calling for Ree to move with them. However, Ree prefers to stay where she is until they find a solution, and Stanley decides to stay with her. Tino gives him a gun for protection in case anything happens. Warren discovers a hat from one of the mine's rooms that belonged to the Australian Allied Forces. He realizes that those who were trapped here must have been experimented on by the Japanese. Meanwhile, the team places Ario on a metal slab covered with sand to rest because of the deep injury to his leg from the explosion. Suddenly, Ario notices the sand beneath him moving. Before he can react, hands reach out from the sand and drag him down. Stanley, Ree, and Captain Joko rush toward the sound of his screams, peering into the hole where Ario was pulled. They see a strange, terrifying creature. Joko jumps into the hole with his rifle, calling for Ario, but there's no response. Stanley insists on going down too, and Ree decides to follow, not wanting to be left alone. Joko hands her a weapon for protection. As they descend, they search for Ario or any sign of what took him. Suddenly, a horrifying sound echoes through the area, and Ree is terrified. Stanley urges her not to scream or make any noise. Joko spots the strange creature again, but loses sight of it as it disappears quickly. They continue searching, with Ree using her flashlight, and she stumbles upon a figure with a shattered head, bleeding. She is paralyzed by shock and fear, unlike Stanley, who remains calm and urges them to move quickly. Unfortunately, before they can proceed, a strange man in a mask appears, hitting Stanley with a metal object, knocking him unconscious. Meanwhile, Warren discovers a notebook containing medical notes and methods for preparing chemical gases used by the Japanese. Ario finds a jar filled with severed fingers, a grotesque reminder of the experiments conducted on prisoners of war. Joko continues searching for Ario, unaware of what happened to him. Suddenly, Joko is dragged by his legs into a deeper hole, just like Ario. He fires his rifle in all directions, unsure of where the enemy might attack. He stumbles upon a disfigured corpse, with organs exposed and its brain outside its skull. Overwhelmed by the horror, Joko is unsure of what to do. Then, the creature that took Ario appears again. Joko fires quickly, killing it. When he examines the body, he realizes it was a deformed human, almost alien-like. He continues searching for Ario, calling his name loudly. Suddenly, another creature appears behind him, striking him on the head, knocking him to the ground, and stealing his rifle before running away. And at that moment, Joko feels surrounded by a great danger. Suddenly, a third creature appears behind him, covering his eyes and pressing hard until it nearly destroys him. But Joko manages to turn the situation around, hitting the creature repeatedly until he defeats it. He then pulls out his gun, trying to defend himself despite not being able to see anything. He moves based on the terrifying sounds of the creatures, eventually realizing a large group of them is targeting him. He fires his gun until it runs out of bullets without hitting any of them. As the creatures close in on him from all directions, Joko feels their breath on him, confirming his impending doom. He throws the empty gun to the ground, fully resigned to his fate, and the creatures finish him off in the most horrific way imaginable. His screams reach the area where Tino, Ario, Warren, and Su Ling are. Ario and Tino rush to help him, but are shocked to find the door locked, trapping them inside as the lights go out. Meanwhile, Stanley and Ree wake up, realizing they've been captured by a man in a gas mask. Stanley is lying on the ground as the man speaks to him in Japanese. Ree translates for him, revealing that the man claims Stanley is now a prisoner of the Imperial Japanese Army. Rie had woken up earlier and tried to explain to the man that the war was over, but he didn't believe her. She attempts again, and this time shows him a video clip proving Japan's surrender in 1945. The old man is deeply affected, realizing the truth. He kneels in front of a covered corpse wrapped in a Japanese flag, weeping and acknowledging the man had been right all along. At the same time, a deformed creature attacks Warren and Su Ling, hitting Warren with a bone through his chest. Tino shoots the creature, but it's unaffected. Ario stabs the creature with a large hook, finally forcing it away from Tino. Su Ling helps Warren, removing the bone and stopping the bleeding. Ryan and Stanley continue talking to the old man, learning he had been a guard in this place for 70 years. He explains that when the Japanese army abandoned the facility in 1945, he was trapped here with one of his comrades, who later died. The body wrapped in the flag is revealed to be his fallen comrade, named Daki. He recalls that Daki wanted to surrender after the radio was destroyed, believing the war was over, but the old man didn't trust him and killed him to prevent his escape. The old man also reveals that many prisoners held in this facility were turned into monsters by the Japanese army, using nerve gas that drove them insane. These monsters are the deformed creatures that have been chasing them all along. He further explains that the army conducted chemical experiments aiming to preserve youth forever. Though they succeeded in creating the material, the experiments ultimately failed, leaving their subjects horribly deformed, as evidenced by the old man's own twisted appearance. The goal had been to create human weapons, but it only led to disaster. Back with the rest of the group, they finally managed to break through the door, only to find another barrier. Behind it is a vast open area, and as Tino steps on a certain line, a toxic gas is released from ventilation openings. The place begins to light up, revealing a massive army of deformed creatures dressed in armor and wielding swords, ready for battle. As Tino and Ario fire at them, none of the creatures fall due to the armored suits they wear. One of the creatures slashes on the arm, forcing them to retreat back to Warren and Su Ling. While Ario is closing the door behind them, one of the soldiers manages to sneak a weapon into his body, striking him. The army passes through the door, and the team tries to escape quickly before they get caught. When Aryo tries to confront them, one of the soldiers strikes him with the sharp weapon he had used earlier to finish off the creature that attacked Tino, killing Aryo. At that moment, the team discovers a hole in the ground that they can escape through, but Tino realizes that Aryo isn't with them, so he goes back to get him. The army notices Tino and starts chasing him to finish him off as well. Tino runs in terror and heads to the place where he left Warren and Suling, but he finds that they've already descended through the hole, so he quickly follows them. They hear the footsteps of the soldiers around them, and terror overwhelms the group. Once the sound dies down, Tino leads them forward until they come across the body of Dog Quain. One of the creatures attacks Tino, and another attacks Warren, engaging them in a fierce battle. Suling is paralyzed with fear, not knowing how to act, until suddenly one of the creatures charges at her. She grabs a sharp rock and stabs it repeatedly, while Tino does the same to the creature in front of him, finally defeating them. They quickly escape and reach the area where Stanley is through a hole in the ground. Stanley understands they need to move immediately, but Warren is injured from the creature's attack, and Ree says he can't move yet. Tino tells her they can't help him, but Suling goes over to Warren and checks on the gold he had left with her. Ree yells at her, calling her crazy, but Suling explains that this is the only thing that might keep him alive for as long as possible. At that moment, the army of creatures reaches them through the hole in the ground, so they quickly move before they're all killed except for Ree, who freezes in place. She had just seen one of the soldiers raise his sword and decapitate the Japanese guard. The sight terrifies her, and she trembles as one of the soldiers approaches the deformed prisoners, signaling them toward the escape route that Tino and his group took. Within seconds, the creatures catch up with them, attacking again. Raye picks up a stone and hits one of them until she kills it, while Tino grabs a nearby weapon and stabs the creature that was choking him, finishing it off. Suling enters a nearby room with Warren, and the door shuts behind them before the others can enter. The rest of the group is forced to take another route, but finds the army coming toward them from the front. They turn to find another soldier blocking their path, realizing they are surrounded from all directions. They enter a room and barricade the door behind them, trying to fend off the soldiers breaking through. Ree discovers a sewer drain on the floor, and Stanley tells her to remove the cover while he and Tino hold the door. The enemy's swords start piercing through the door, and their strength to hold it back begins to fade. Once Ree removes the cover, Tino insists that Stanley escape with her, leaving him behind. Raye and Stanley descend into the hole, and the deformed army breaks through the door, swarming in. One of them slashes at Tino, knocking him to the ground. He gets up again and grabs a nearby weapon to fight them off. Meanwhile, Stanley and Ree find themselves in the sewer, surrounded by a large amount of water. In another location, Warren has lost consciousness, and Suling is unable to move him. She encourages him to get up, and Warren opens his eyes in a terrifying manner, showing signs of turning into a monster. He grabs Suling and repeatedly slams her head against the rocks until she loses her life. Ree discovers an underwater tunnel leading to a river and escapes through it. As Stanley moves to follow her, one of the soldiers appears and kills him. Rhea reaches the surface of the river, calling out for Stanley and searching for him, but she can't find him. She swims to the shore, only to be followed by one of the soldiers emerging from the water. She grabs a tree branch and strikes him, but he remains unfazed. He hits her, knocking her to the ground, grabs her by the neck, and lifts her into the air. A group of soldiers follows behind him, throwing her to the ground. One of them raises his sword in front of her and finishes her off along with the rest of the soldiers. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button to get more new videos. See ya!